You know what's funny? The people who once told me I'd amount to nothing are now the same ones sitting outside my gate, begging for a second chance. My name is Marcus, and this is the story of how my own family threw me away like garbage, only to watch me rise from the ashes and build an empire they could never even dream of. But here's the twist: when they came crawling back, asking for forgiveness, asking for money, asking for a place in my life, I had a choice to make. And what I did? Well, let's just say karma doesn't forget, and neither did I. This is a story about betrayal, about survival, about revenge served cold, and about the moment I realized that sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you deserve. So buckle up, because this ride, it's going to hurt them more than it ever hurt me. Let me take you back to where it all began. I grew up in a middle-class family in a small town. My parents ran a modest grocery store, nothing fancy, but we got by. I had one older brother, Daniel, and from the moment he was born, he was the golden child. Daniel was charming, athletic, popular. He was the son my parents showed off at every family gathering. Meanwhile, I was just Marcus, the quiet one, the one who liked books more than sports, the one who asked too many questions and dreamed too big for a small-town kid. My parents didn't say it out loud, but I felt it every single day. The way my father's eyes lit up when Daniel walked into the room. The way my mother bragged about Daniel's football trophies, but never mentioned my straight A's. The way every family photo somehow centered around him, while I stood at the edge, barely in frame. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I'd prove them wrong one day, that I'd make them proud, that I'd show them I was worth something too. But I had no idea just how wrong things were about to go. When I turned 17, I did something that changed everything. I got accepted into one of the top universities in the country, full scholarship, business and economics. It was my ticket out, my chance to finally become someone. I was so excited. I ran home with the acceptance letter in my hand, my heart pounding, thinking, finally, they'll see me. I burst through the door and shouted, "Mom! Dad! I got in! Full scholarship!" My mother looked up from the stove. My father glanced away from the TV. And for a moment, just a split second, I saw something in their eyes. Not pride, not joy, disappointment. My father spoke first. "Marcus, sit down. We need to talk." I sat. My hands were shaking. I didn't understand. "We're proud of you, son," he said, but his voice was flat, empty. "But we can't let you go." I blinked. "What? Why? It's a full scholarship. It won't cost you anything." "It's not about the money," my mother interrupted. Her voice was cold, clinical. "It's about family. Your brother's opening a business, a car dealership. He needs help. And we've decided you're going to stay here and work with him." I felt the air leave my lungs. "What about my scholarship?" I whispered. "You'll decline it," my father said simply. "Family comes first, Marcus. Daniel needs you. End of discussion." I looked at them, really looked at them, and in that moment, I realized something that shattered me to my core. They didn't see me as a son. They saw me as a tool, a backup plan, someone to sacrifice so their golden child could shine even brighter. I begged, I cried, I pleaded, but they didn't care. And 2 weeks later, I watched my dream slip away because I was too young, too scared, and too heartbroken to fight back. So I stayed. I worked at Daniel's car dealership. And let me tell you, It was hell. Daniel treated me like hired help, not like a brother, not like family. I was the guy who cleaned the cars, handled the paperwork, dealt with the angry customers. I worked 12-hour days, 6 days a week, and my paycheck barely enough to survive. Meanwhile, Daniel drove a brand new BMW. He bought a house. He partied every weekend while I slept in a tiny rented room above a laundromat. And my parents, they acted like everything was perfect. They praised Daniel at every family dinner. They called him a successful entrepreneur. They never once asked me how I was doing. I felt invisible, worthless, trapped. But deep down, something was building inside me. A fire, a hunger, a refusal to accept this as my life. So I made a decision, a dangerous one. I was going to leave. I was going to rebuild. And I was going to make sure they regretted every single moment they made me feel small. One night, I packed a single bag. I took every cent I'd saved, about $3,000. It wasn't much, but it was all I had. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't leave a note. I just disappeared. I moved to the city 3 hours away. I rented a cheap studio apartment. And I started over, from zero. I worked 3 jobs at once: delivery driver, warehouse night shift, weekend bartender. I barely slept. I lived off instant noodles and black coffee. But I didn't care, because I had something my family never gave me: freedom. And more importantly, I had a plan. For 2 years, I worked like a machine. I saved every penny. I studied online courses in business, marketing, investing. I read every book I could find. I networked with strangers at coffee shops and bars. I learned from people who had built something from nothing. And then I took the biggest risk of my life. I used every dollar I'd saved, about $18,000 by then, and I started a small online business. Dropshipping. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't easy. But I had one advantage. I had nothing to lose. The first few months were brutal. I barely broke even. I thought I'd failed. I thought I was a fool. But then it clicked. One product went viral, then another, then another. Within 6 months, I was making more in a month than I'd made in a year at Daniel's dealership. Within a year, I was pulling in 6 figures. Within 2 years, I had a team, a warehouse, a brand, and a net worth that made my parents' grocery store look like pocket change. I didn't tell them. I didn't call. I didn't reach out. Because honestly, I didn't think they cared. And I was done caring too. But life has a funny way of bringing the past back to your doorstep. It was a Saturday morning. I was living in a nice apartment downtown. Not a mansion, not yet, but comfortable. Clean. Mine. There was a knock on my door. I opened it, and there they were. My mother, my father, and Daniel. For a moment, we just stared at each other. I hadn't seen them in over 4 years. My mother's eyes filled with tears. "Marcus, oh my God, it's really you." I didn't move. I didn't smile. I just stood there. "What do you want?" I asked. My voice was calm, cold. My father cleared his throat. "Son, we've been looking for you. We wanted to talk." "Talk?" I repeated. "Now you want to talk?" Daniel shifted uncomfortably. He looked smaller somehow, less confident. "Can we come in?" my mother asked, her voice trembling. I stepped aside, not out of kindness, but out of curiosity. I wanted to hear this. They sat on my couch, and that's when I saw it. The shame, the guilt, the desperation. And that's when my father said the words that changed everything. "Marcus, we need your help." I sat across from them, arms folded, saying nothing. My father continued. "Daniel's dealership, It's failing. We invested everything into it. The house is mortgaged. The store is barely surviving. We're drowning in debt." My mother sobbed quietly. We didn't know where else to turn, and then we heard, "Someone told us you were doing well, that you had a business, that you were successful." Successful! The word hung in the air like poison. I almost laughed. Almost. "So let me get this straight," I said slowly. "You threw away my future so Daniel could play businessman. You ignored me. You used me. You made me feel worthless. And now that your golden child crashed and burned, you come crawling to me for money?" Silence. Daniel finally spoke. "Marcus, I'm sorry. I really am. I was an idiot. I took you for granted, but we're family. Please. Family. That word used to mean something to me, once upon a time. But now, it just sounded hollow." I stood up and walked to the window. I looked out at the city, at the life I'd built, alone. Then I turned back to them. "I'll help you," I said. Their faces lit up. My mother gasped. My father stood, reaching out to shake my hand. "But," I continued, "on my terms." They froze. "I'll pay off your debts. I'll save the dealership. I'll even buy back your house from the bank. But here's the deal." I looked each of them in the eye. "From now on, I own 51% of every business asset you have. The dealership, the store, everything. I make the decisions. You work for me. And Daniel," I turned to my brother, "you'll work at the dealership, not as the owner, as a salesman, minimum wage plus commission, just like any other employee." Daniel's jaw dropped. "You can't be serious." "I'm dead serious," I said. "You want my help? Those are my terms. Take it or leave it." My father looked like he'd been slapped. My mother was pale, but they had no choice, and they knew it. "We accept," my father finally said, his voice barely a whisper. I smiled, not out of joy, but out of something darker, something I didn't even recognize in myself. Revenge. I kept my word. Within 3 months, I restructured everything. I paid off their debts, refinanced the properties, and turned both businesses profitable again. But I didn't do it for them. I did it for me. Because now, I controlled everything. Daniel worked the sales floor. He hated every second of it. Customers who used to respect him now ordered him around. And every time he complained, I reminded him, "You wanted family to come first, remember?" My parents ran the grocery store under my management. I updated the inventory systems, hired proper staff, and turned it into a mini chain. They made money again. But they answered to me. And me? I expanded my own business empire. I invested in real estate. I launched 2 more online brands. I became the success story they never believed in, and every single day they had to watch me rise while they worked under my shadow. One evening, about a year after the takeover, my mother invited me to a family dinner. I almost said no, but I was curious. I showed up. The table was set. My parents, Daniel, his wife, even some extended family I hadn't seen in years. My father stood and raised his glass. "I want to make a toast," he said, his voice shaking slightly, "to Marcus, who saved this family, who showed us what we failed to see." Everyone clinked their glasses. I didn't. I just looked at him, and then I asked the question I'd been holding inside for years. "Dad, why wasn't I enough?" The room went silent. "When I got that scholarship, why didn't you believe in me?" My father's face crumbled. Tears welled in his eyes. "I don't know, son," he whispered. "I was blind. I was wrong. I was a fool." My mother reached for my hand. "We're so sorry, Marcus. We failed you, and we'll spend the rest of our lives trying to make it right." I pulled my hand away. "I don't want your apologies," I said quietly. "I wanted your love, your belief, but you gave it all to him." I stood up. "Enjoy the dinner. I paid for it." And I walked out. Months passed. I kept running the businesses. I kept building my empire. But something inside me felt empty. Revenge didn't feel as good as I thought it would. Watching them struggle, watching them bow to me, it didn't heal the wounds. It just reminded me of what I'd lost, what I'd never had. One night, Daniel called me. "Marcus," he said, his voice raw, "I need to tell you something." I listened. "I was jealous of you," he admitted. "Even back then, you were smarter than me, more driven. I knew it. Mom and Dad knew it. And I think that's why they held you back. Because deep down, they were scared you'd leave us all behind." I closed my eyes. "Well," I said, "I did." "I know," Daniel said, "and you had every right to. I'm sorry, Marcus. Not because I want something from you, but because you deserved better, and I helped take that from you." For the first time in years, I heard something in his voice I'd never heard before. Truth. A few weeks later, I made a decision. I called a family meeting. My parents, Daniel, everyone. I laid out new terms. "I'm stepping back," I said. "I'm giving you back full control of the dealership and the store. No strings attached." They stared at me in shock. "But here's the deal," I continued. "I don't want your money. I don't want your gratitude. I just want one thing." I looked at my father. "I want you to put a picture of me on that wall, next to Daniel's trophies, next to all the things you were proud of. I want you to remember that I was here, that I mattered, that I was your son too." My father broke down. He nodded, tears streaming down his face. "And then," I said, "I'm walking away, for good." I left that town. I built my life somewhere new. I found people who valued me, who saw me, who believed in me. And you know what I learned? Family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up, who believes in you when you're nobody, who lifts you up instead of holding you down. I don't hate my family anymore. I don't love them either. I've just moved on. Because the greatest revenge isn't making them suffer. It's becoming so successful, so happy, so complete without them, that their opinions no longer matter. They abandoned me. But in doing so, they set me free. And I built an empire on that freedom. So, if you're out there feeling forgotten, feeling invisible, feeling like you're not enough, let me tell you something. You are enough. You always were. And the people who can't see that, they don't deserve a front row seat to your success. Build your empire, shut them all down. Not with anger, but with success. Because that's the sweetest revenge of all. Thanks for watching. If this story hit home for you, drop a comment below. And remember, your worth isn't defined by the people who couldn't see it. Now go out there and prove them all wrong.